G'day and welcome back to Project 200. Today I'm going to be replacing the coolant in the 200. It's a reasonably simple job, but due to the design of the system, there are a few things you need to do to bleed air out after you put the new coolant in. If you also need to replace the thermostat, check out my other videos for one that also shows that procedure. Begin with the vehicle cold and parked on a level surface. You'll need 15 litres of pre-mixed Toyota Super Long Life coolant or a compatible equivalent. You can find a list of options on the Project 200 website. First, remove the plastic trim panel from above the radiator by pushing the centre of the clips, then removing each clip. Next, remove the plastic trim from the intercooler by removing the two nuts, then lifting the cover forward and off. Moving under the vehicle, remove the bull bar stone tray if you've got one fitted, plus the bash plates or factory plastic trim covers under the engine. Now it's time to drain the coolant. First, remove the cap from the reservoir. Place a minimum 10 litre drain pan underneath the radiator drain and loosen the valve. Allow it to drain until the flow stops, then close the drain valve. Then place a 10 litre drain pan underneath the oil filter bracket drain valve. Loosen the valve with a 10mm spanner and allow the coolant to drain out of the engine until the flow stops. Then tighten the drain valve to 13 nm. It's now time to refill the coolant. Remove the engine air bleed cap from just below the intercooler and attach a clear hose to the pipe. Using a 3/8 inch drive ratchet, remove the radiator vent plug. Then start pouring coolant into the reservoir tank. Filling will be a reasonably slow process as the coolant flows from the reservoir to the radiator and into the engine, particularly as the level approaches the top of the reservoir. You'll need to leave it for a few minutes and gradually continue to top up the tank several times. As the coolant level nears the top of the reservoir, occasionally squeeze the top radiator hose to help remove air bubbles from the system. The coolant level needs to reach the top of the reservoir filler neck. Keep an eye on the clear hose attached to the engine air bleed valve. Once coolant emerges, remove the tube and replace the engine air bleed cap and the hose clamp. Replace the radiator vent plug. Torque this to only 2 Nm. That's not much more than finger tight. Over tightening this plug will cause it to break. If this happens, you'll find a link to the correct part on the Project 200 website. Next, replace the radiator reservoir cap, then start the engine and let it idle for a few minutes. Wearing a glove and avoiding the engine fan and belt, squeeze the top radiator hose repeatedly to bleed any remaining air from the system. If the coolant level in the reservoir drops significantly, turn off the engine, allow it to cool, then top it back up to the filler neck before repeating the process. Once the level is stabilised, you need to bring the engine up to full operating temperature. Toyota specify running the engine at 3000 revs for 10 minutes with the vehicle stationary. I'm not a fan of that suggestion, so personally I decided to go for a short drive instead, returning once the ultra gauge reached around 80 degrees Celsius. Stop the engine and allow it to cool back to ambient temperature. Once cool, ensure that the level is sitting between the low and full lines on the reservoir. Finally, check for any coolant leaks. You can then replace the bash plates or under-engine covers, plus the bull bar stone tray if you've got one fitted. Then replace the intercooler trim cover and the radiator trim cover with its 7 clips. If you happen to break or lose any of the retaining clips, you'll find a link to the correct part on the Project 200 website. I hope you found this video useful. Check out the Project 200 website for photos and more information on the procedure, plus the additional steps required if you also need to replace the thermostat. See you next time.